In an attempt to find the best functional trainer on the market, amongst all of these and many others, there's one that keeps popping up that we keep getting questions on, and that one is this, the Inspire Fitness FT2. Let's review. Hey guys, it's Coop from Garage Gym Reviews. And today we have a much awaited, much requested review on the Inspire FT2. Now the Inspire FT2 is a product that has been out for a long time. Honestly, probably close to a decade. This is one of the most popular functional trainer kind of all-in-one unit. But the reality is when this was released, there really wasn't anything else like it. If you like this sort of thing, you're into reviews and specifically on functional trainers, I would highly suggest you subscribe because if you look over here, we have a lot that we're planning on reviewing and comparing. So if you'd like to see that, make sure you subscribe. Okay, first things first, let's talk about the Assambly. Now this one, Sam says, took about 6 hours. I asked him, how does it compare to the Rep Aries? He said this one was much more difficult. He said the instructions weren't as good, it took longer, there's just more that was disassembled. Now the dimensions, this is really made for a home gym. This one we're reviewing is 89 inches tall, the depth is 58 inches, and the width is 61 inches. I mean, if you look at the form and function of it, it looks like it's a squat rack. And in fact, you would think this is designed to be used with a barbell in addition to all the capabilities that are here. But you would be wrong. And I'll talk about that in a little bit later, but before I get into the things that it's missing, let me get into the things that it has because it's got some pretty sweet stuff. Okay, one thing you notice, especially when putting it together, is there are a lot of freaking pulleys on this thing, but it has even more connection points. So let me show you. Number one, you have these functional trainers on each side. So this can be used just like a traditional functional trainer. But wait, there's more. There are 4 pulley exit points at the bottom. And you're thinking, why would there be 4? I'll get into that in a moment. That's actually a really cool feature, but these two are really made for low rows, or you can use them for curls. But wait, there is more. These two up top. And one of the nice things about this and some of the design is the pulley stacks are on a 2-to-1 ratio. But if you wanted to increase the load by double and use a single handle, you can simply connect them together. The stacks themselves are 165 pounds each. And that's the base model, that you can actually add 50 pounds extra to each side. So 82.5 coming off these sides is enough for most people. Now that also means the ones on the low rows and the ones for the lat pull downs. 82.5 pounds is really not enough for most people doing a lat pull down, especially a low row. But that's where the doubling up comes in handy. So suddenly you can have a 165 pound lat pull or 165 pound low row using both stacks, and that should definitely be sufficient for most people. Okay, next is honestly the most interesting feature on this, and really is what makes it the FT2 stand out amongst all competitors. There is not another machine that I can think of, let me know in the comments if you know one, that does something similar to this. This is actually really well done. This is what they made their name on. There are ones that have it, but not in the way that this one's done. This also has a Smith machine. This is simply up here to store away when it's not in use. When you want to use it, you just pull that lever back and suddenly this locks in. But the real con potentially is you can tell there's no way to load plates. So then you're like, all right, how do I add weight? And this is where it gets pretty cool. All right, so if you come over here, you are able to use the same weight stacks you're using on your functional trainer on your Smith machine. And it's a really simple, kind of cool mechanism. So there's this little red piece right here. You bring this over and suddenly the Smith machine is now connected to the weight stacks. And that's pretty cool, but the other thing that's built into this is essentially a spotter. So this is really designed for people that are lifting alone and want additional safety. But the reality is, like, having safety while you're lifting does matter, especially when you're lifting alone. The way that this works is when I want to set my spotters, I can do it while I lift. So if I come under here, I pull this back, suddenly my spotters are moving with me. If I go down and I basically, there's like no resistance on here, even though the stacks are connected. So it's pretty much just the weight of the bar, which isn't very much. So I come down to whatever position the bottom of my position is. I can then lock in the spotters, you just hear that, come out, and suddenly the weight stacks are connected. So you can see my weight stacks are connected. I can do my sets down to the spotters with the weight stacks connected, connect it, come up, unweight it again, and then lock it back in. So there's a lot that's happening right there. Let me kind of show you again, but a little bit closer up. So you have to unhook it, okay? Now that it's unhooked, so the way that works is you're pulling forward, and that's detaching. So now it's detaching. Basically, it's engaging these levers here. Then you go down to the bottom of a rep, wherever that is, you then pull back. It's now locked in. So, I mean, it's locked in. Now you're able to do your reps with the weight stack attached. You can see it. So it works for squats, deadlifts, anything you could do on a normal Smith machine, you can do it on this. Instead of it using Olympic plates, it's selectorized stacks. And so selectorized stacks allow you to select the weight easily, quickly. The downside is the weight. So if you have the upgraded weight stacks, which increase these 50 pounds, you also do this. The cables themselves, as I previously stated, is a 2-to-1 ratio. But to basically remove the 2-to-1 ratio, you can attach another pulley. So you just take the pulley that is attached to your functional trainer. You're not probably using it while you're using the Smith machine, but if you are, you can just take it off, say you're supersetting or something. You then attach it up to the top pulley there. You now have a bar that is on basically 1-to-1 ratio. So suddenly, if you have the 50-pound stacks, you can have a bar that goes up to 460 pounds. Now let me get into kind of the fit and finish of the machine and just the individual components. Okay, so that's how it functions, but let me kind of get into the actual components and then I'll tell you what's good and what's not good. Okay, first is the weight stacks. This is something that's very annoying. I absolutely hate when companies do this. I don't know why they do this. I wish they'd given another option. If you're looking at the weight stack, you can probably already tell what I'm gonna say, is they don't have any weights on here. There's no weight increments. This does not weigh 1 pound. That does not weigh 16 pounds. But people wanna know how much they're lifting. So this just forces another calculation that people have to do. But these stacks right here are just cast iron plates. They're pretty simple plates. The head plate's cast iron too. As you can see here, there's these extra cones, and those cones are there simply if you want to add extra weight, you can take this full stack off, take the cones off, and then add the weight. Now what's protecting them is this like weird nylon cover thing. This reminds me of what's on the Titan Ronin. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that or the review. It uses the same material. This is basically the cheapest way to protect the stacks. It's not a big deal for most people, okay? I recognize that. I'm just gonna call it out. Now the cable that's used on here is pretty heavy duty, but I will say the pulleys that are used on here are a nylon pulley. Personally, for most home gyms, I prefer aluminum pulleys. The reason being is they're smoother. The reason that companies use nylon pulleys is because in commercial environments, they are less likely to wear out. Whereas if you use aluminum pulleys, the aluminum pulleys won't wear out, but they will wear out the cabling. Really, I wish they had the option to add or upgrade or just make it aluminum pulleys. Because this is being used in a home gym, it would just make it, you know, somewhat more smooth. That said, there are 30 total pulleys on this. So there's a lot of pulleys that are throughout. You have to recognize this is all stuff you have to put together yourself when you buy it. Then there's this red Smith bar here. I actually like the color. It's nice because it provides a contrast, and it's also nice because you can see it so you don't hit your head on it. I think that's probably the biggest reason they have it there, just so like if you're using it, it's very easy to see and recognize. It is knurled. It is not a good knurl. It's not. This is a low quality knurl with not Cerakote. It's like a glossy powder coat or paint. Basically the knurl is almost non-existent. The other thing is like this center knurl, there's no center knurl, which kind of makes sense because people may do front squats or something like that, but it doesn't make sense because this is a very slick coating. So using it on your back, it's not that great. It doesn't stick very well. If you're used to an actual barbell, you're not gonna like this bar. This bar feels really crappy compared to real bars, and that's because the knurling and just how glossy and slick it is. To give you the best comparison to this bar, the one it compares most to, in my opinion, is the cap barbell that we dropped 3,000, but it bent at like 800 pounds. So it has the same like plastic coating, whereas if it bends, it starts cracking. Now, the spotters that are built in, I love this feature. They come with shocks or springs. This allows you to basically dump the bar easily and have some sort of shock. Because you're gonna be potentially lifting over 400 pounds on this, and let's say you drop it from the top of the rep, there needs to be some sort of shock to protect it, and that can do it. Due to the design and where the stacks are placed and where it's bolted, it's not the most stable. So there is a pull-up bar up top, which is knurled, by the way, and what's funny is the knurling on this is a more significant, more aggressive, better feeling knurl than what's on the barbell. which doesn't really make sense. I wish they would have just done them the same. When you're using this, the machine has a tendency to sway if you're like putting any sort of English on it. So as you can see, I don't think it's gonna affect your workout, but no, like you're spending a good chunk of money and like it's just not the most stable. All right, now let me get into what's good and what's not so good. Okay, the first big pro is there's, as you can see, a lot of versatility in a somewhat compact form. In fact, another pro is one of the low row pieces can actually be used on a bench. So we don't have it in here, but this is a really cool feature that I hope other companies will like be inspired by, because this thing is sick. The reason that there's these extra pulleys is, yeah, you can use them for low rows or other things, but they can be specifically used for a bench they have that backs up into this and then has a leg extension and leg curl attached to the bench. Like you see on some of the cheaper benches that are out there, which by the way, I love the idea of having a bench that has a leg extension and leg curl. I wish like higher end companies would have it. It's very nice. I don't understand why they avoid it, but I don't know of any other bench that has pulleys inherent in the bench, which this one does, for it to be smooth all throughout the motion. That's what makes it unique. Now let's get into my cons, because there's quite a few of them and they're kind of big. Number one is there's no squat rack built in. If you're somebody that wants to use a barbell, that means if you have this, you're also gonna have to have a squat rack. So you're gonna have to have something that takes up the same space, which is why competitors like the Force USA G20, X20, X15, the Rep Aries, and some of those are really options that appeal to me and a lot of others, because it can do a lot of the things that this can do, not everything, but it can also take up the same space and be used with a normal free weight barbell. That to me is a massive con, and you just have to know going into it, if you ever want to use a barbell on a rack, this will not be the rack. I think for the price, the quality is not as high as I'd expect. It's just not the sturdiest. The components, I do like that there's like etching on these here. The like knurling that's on it is just okay. The pulleys are just okay. The shrouds, it just doesn't feel like a really high level piece. The other thing is like the size of it. You cannot overhead press with this, especially most people at least. So like I'm a pretty average size and I can't, I mean, you're just gonna hit it. So you're gonna have to make sure you're sitting. That's a benefit because you can use it in a basement, but it's also a downside because there are people that would like to do overhead work and that sort of thing in the rack, and you just can't do it with the Smith machine. The last one, and this is a big one, is we're not buying this in a silo. There's a lot of options that are available today. When this came out, wasn't a lot of competitors. You fast forward 5, 6, 10 years, man, there are a lot of competitors in this space today because there's a lot of people having home gyms. Okay, hold on to your butts. This, all that you see here in the base model is $5,000 with free shipping. That is a lot of money, especially when you factor in that you can't use it on a squat rack. How does that compare to other options? So first option are the Force USA options. Those seem like the ones that to me are often most comparable. The Force USA G20, which is plate loaded, but it does have stacks on the back that do get really heavy. That can be used for lat pull downs, functional trainer pieces. It also has the addition of a leg press. It can be used as a Smith machine. There's a lot there. It's $6 grand. So you're paying $1,000 more to get that one. Next one would be the Force USA X15. The X15 and the X20 are similar. The X15 does just have a half rack. This one does not have a Smith machine, but it costs quite a bit less at $4 grand. And then if you go with the X20 because you want a full rack, pay another $1,000, and you're looking at $5 grand. Then you have the rack that I think competes the most with this. That is newer and that I think has some superior features and quality depending on what you're looking for, and that's the Rep Aries. The Rep Aries we recently reviewed. If you are into free weights, that's kind of the option because you have similar pulley systems, but you also have a squat rack. The one downside and the difference, and the reason that this one can still be recommended, is that it does not have a Smith machine. But you get a freaking amazing rack with heavy stacks that can do a lot for quite a bit less than this. So a little bit over $3,500, you can get the Rep Aries, and there's just a lot you can do with that. This one lives in a unique position and is the reason that I would still recommend this depending on what you're looking for. This is kind of a niche person, but if you are somebody who likes the ability of all the cable features and either has a separate squat rack that they want to keep separate or does not plan to use a squat rack but would rather use the Smith machine and really likes the Smith machine, this is your option. Despite some of its shortcomings in quality and stability, like you're gonna enjoy this. You can get strong, fit, toned. Is that a real thing? What is toned?
You.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Let me know in the comments of what you think of this. I know this is really popular. I see people talk about the FT2 all the time in the community. Do you like it? What's your experience with it? How do you think it compares to others? And would you like to see us compare this directly, side to side with any others that are out there? Let me know in the comments. We'll see you next time. Peace.